Munson here, Chief Conversationalist at OurNet and Community Builder, and this is the place for conversations, and I'm having one now with Shreyansh Surana, my colleague at OurNet, who has a very interesting story of coming from India to Europe and all that that means. And so much of what we talk about are interested in certainly from my point of view, it's not what OurNet is all about for everyone. Come and make of it what you will. But what's very important to me is context, communication, conversation, and how human beings make their reality out of those things. And is it fair to say your reality has been changed a little bit or even dented a little by your experience of coming from India to Europe, to Germany specifically?
Yeah, for sure. I think coming to Europe and Germany and Portugal has definitely changed my perspective, but it's less to do with what I know about the world and more to do with what I've learned about myself. So just a bit of background is that I lived in India and I grew up there, and then I moved to Germany when I was 21, and to study physics at the University of Leipzig. I'd already done 2 startups at that point, and I'd worked as an adult almost from 19 to 21, working 100 hours a week at some point. But I never actually had a strong friends group or a community that I could hold on to, and that was one of the reasons why I wanted to go and discover the world and kind of understand more about myself, how I can communicate to people better. So yeah, the first 6 months were a culture shock for me in Germany. People are very different there. Weather is different. I went there in October, so my first season there properly was winter, cold, harsh German winters.
From a very hot part of India.
Yeah, I'm from the desert part of India, Rajasthan. It has a desert in it. I literally lived on the edge of desert in the arid regions. So it's very warm. It's 330 days of sunshine and brightness. And then you go to Germany where it's dark literally every day.
But this is like a TV show, Extreme Culture Shock, this week featuring Shreyansh, who's gone from desert India to freezing cold Germany, and not just the weather, but the whole cultural shift.
Yeah.
Whatever. So tell us more about that.
The cultural shift is about... So like what's important to a young person, I have to tell, or we have to kind of understand that you need friends, you want to go out and date people, or you want to meet new people, and you want to drink a bit, you want to have a bit of fun, while you're studying, you work hard and then you want to party hard. The problem was I didn't know any of it. I wasn't a big party person before. I didn't drink a lot, and the idea of losing yourself or having that spirit, I just didn't know how to do it. So I would go to clubs or I would go partying and I would fall asleep. Like I wouldn't drink so much I would fall asleep. I would just be bored. So I would, in this club where it's like thumping music, I would be sleeping. These are real stories. So yeah.
And that's a contrast of Western, Northern Europe then, and Indian culture perhaps. Because, where I'm from in the UK, people go to clubs to get drunk. And like you say, I think you touched on it there, lose themselves, I suppose, get rid of their routine otherwise from the rest of the week and let it go in the club. And it's a kind of sort of personal and social experiment, what goes on after that. So that's not cultural for you and you had to adjust to it. Were you attracted to it?
Yeah, because again, I was attracted to it because I read books and, seen TV shows and stuff. And it was interesting. I saw Skins, I'm sure.
Yes, British TV, Skins. Yeah.
It was like, that was like the first point where I realized my high school was boring. I was like, shit, these guys are really having fun. Again, I'm sure that's not true for Britain. It's not like everyone's, doing what the characters in Skins do. But for me, that was what I wanted to do at some point. I really wanted to experience that.
But that in itself is unusual, isn't it? Because a lot of people would look at that, and part of the job in a way of Skins is to polarize people's opinion, isn't it? The people who don't like that say that's all that's wrong with the world and young people. I don't want to ever be like that, and I don't want my children to be like that. Other people who are from a different culture might say, yeah, that looks great fun. I can't wait to get out of my culture and try that. Yeah. I'm guessing you're in the latter category.
So it's very confusing because I am from a very, as I said, I'm from a conservative family, and my background is everyone's an academic. My family is a family of kind of overachievers. Everyone has great degrees and very intelligent people, but there are also people who are it's a very narrow corridor. There's no choice. You
Mm.
know, you can't drink, you can't do X, Y, Z, whatever, and those are the bounds you have to live in. And I think it's about free will for me. I think it was about why the hell can I not make that choice? I
Yeah.
wanna. I want to try it for myself. And because I read Michael Crichton when I was young, there's a book, Westworld, there's a TV show now about it. And the whole show is about how humans are actually don't have free will because our only instinct is survival, and everything we do is for to that cause. And in the book there's machines, AI machines, like humanoid robots that have AI, look like humans, they're beautiful, and they are supposed to have more free will than us because their only instinct isn't survival, they're immortal because they're machines.
So they could do anything they want.
And I was like, shit, am I also it made me question everything. I was like, am I just like doing things because people are telling me? And it was true. I was
I
just
get
doing
it.
things.
I get it because there you are, um, asleep in that scenario. On the face of it, it's a glamorous situation. I'm going to go to that club. I'm going to go where that music is. I'm going to go to this. I think you've referred to it as hype zig. This is one of the most glamorous, up and coming, coolest places to be in Western Europe. And there you're asleep in that scenario. So it's like on one level you're not really responding to it, but on another level you desperately want it.
So no, I would disagree there because Leipzig isn't like an obvious choice. I
Perfect.
literally made Leipzig as a choice. So the places I applied to were St. Andrews,
Wow.
University of St. Andrews. I
Yeah.
got in actually. I got in.
Congratulations.
Germany, Leipzig, and the other one was Boston. Boston would be a good choice too, but it was
Yeah.
too obvious. It was like, no, that is a choice that other people would also make. I wanted to make a very different choice. And I was like a hardcore academic till that point, till I was in college in India. I had good grades. I had perfect record and everything. I literally have certificates till 10th grade of perfect attendance. Never missed a school day. So I wanted to now experience something different and figure out if I can actually, dictate terms for my own life, I guess. But yeah, that was different. Choosing Leipzig was a weird choice in my opinion.
So how's it go? I mean, this is ongoing, isn't it? It's not like we're here saying this is the conclusion of the experiment because your experience in Europe continues,
Yeah,
and it sounds as if the family narrative of incredible overachievement would have been better served in St Andrews or Boston, but you chose an unusual choice of Leipzig by your own admission, and now you find yourself in Portugal by some quirk of fate.
yeah.
What how has it unfolded for you, and where are you at with these really the biggest and boldest narratives of East meets West, because that's the big and obvious thing, isn't it? But obviously there are subtleties and nuances of all of that and what you bring to that as a person. How's it all going?
Yeah, so I think like when I went to Germany and my experience in Germany, that was my first country, first country in Europe or first country outside my own country where I'd lived in. First time I lived away from community. And I want to explain that in India, community is really tightly knit. When you say family, when I say family, it's not just my parents and my brother and my grandparents, but it's also my uncle, my dad's brother and his kids. When I
Mm,
say, I think you realize this, when I say my brothers, I generally think about all four of them because we grew up together. So
yeah.
having that really tightly knit community and that support, and then going to a country where literally people don't even know their neighbors, um, was very different. But I also didn't know anything else. That was my first experience outside India, and Portugal is the second one. So now I have something to compare it to and be like, some things I was wrong about, some things I wasn't. But what I realized is the East meets West, or the culture shock, or saying that cultures are different is just relaying the fact that you don't understand how humans function, and you lack. Sometimes people lack sympathy with a lot of things. Like, yeah, I understand cultures are different, but they're made up of people, and people are different. Everyone is so different from each other.
Yeah.
So
But then
I
again,
have a
the same,
problem
right?
now.
There's
Right?
there's also the thing you mentioned about Westworld, I think, is that in many ways humans could seem to be the same, as in they are essentially fear avoiding, or fear is created by their survival instinct, and then
Yeah,
that is their motivation and starting point in life, possibly.
yeah,
And
yeah.
at the other end of that spectrum, it's like, you could say love is what we're being drawn towards. I watched a John Coltrane documentary last night, and it's beautifully expressed in that about how he is just seeking the highest. And it gets called God, it gets called all sorts of things, the love supreme. The whole of his life is about being horrified, I think, by the worst of humanity and wanting to be drawn towards the best of it. And you could say that to some degree, for better or for worse, we're all like that, however clumsily we might be expressing it.
Hmm.
So,
Hmm.
so that unites us in a way. But then
Hmm.
you're absolutely right as well, that we're all massively different as an overlay on top of that, individually and then culturally, as you seem to be describing.
Yeah, yeah, and I think, and I also realized like Portugal is a little bit closer to India, or my city or my area in India than Germany was, or Leipzig was. Again, I kind of I've understood not talk about countries but cities, because I like doing that better. Because you can't say like America, you can't say all of Germany, I can't even say all of Portugal is the same. I think the south and north are very different, and
Yeah.
other parts are very different. The away from the coast is different from the coast. So cities is important. The city in Leipzig was, people are way more, they're not as conservative. And then now I'm in Aveiro, which is slightly more conservative. And also people are warmer a little bit more, in the sense that Germans are a little bit personal space, that they're more focused on personal space and are a little bit shy in the starting. And that, again, that's not everyone, but I can generalize that. I think that's something that everyone has told me, and I've also experienced it myself.
Mm.
In Portugal, people will come up to you and they're brighter, and same thing in Italy. So Southern Europe seems to be a little bit similar. Um, and I think this kind of experience living in Portugal explained to me that it doesn't matter where you are. You can't, because I was looking for somewhere where I can live. It was like, oh, where am I gonna settle, whatever. And I realized it has nothing to do with the place. It's all about you and how you try and interpret things and how much you can empathize with the place or the
Well
people.
said. Yeah, because there's that saying, isn't there? Wherever you go, there you are. But what I'm really interested about, and you're 25, right?
Yeah.
And you have these, what I see as considerable achievements in your life already, and this travel has clearly broadened and blown your mind in different measure.
Hmm.
But it seems to me as well that there is something that goes with that, which is like a sort of Pandora's box concept. And
Yeah.
you said you come from a conservative family culture, and exposing yourself to things very different to that put you in an awkward position in a way, don't they? On the one hand, it's really an adventure, and it's very exciting to discover new things and to live, I think, as I've done, not like my given identity, but my own created one. That's such almost a cruel thing for humans to have to experience, isn't it? It's like the further you move away from the tree, the and the other kinds of fruit you meet, if we put it that way, the more of a rod you create for your own back as well, because there's no going back, is there? And I think there's something of that for you as well. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think the idea is that the thing that I wanted to really, sorry, I'm a bit lost in thought, but I understood from my experience, I understood I learned new things. I understood more about myself, but then some of the things I learned about myself aren't necessarily, I think I would be better not knowing them, you know? No, really, I think ignorance is bliss in that case.
I'm laughing at the truth of it, not because I don't believe you.
Yeah,
It's one of those comic human situations.
yeah. So this is a bit of a crude example, but one example would be, um, I'd never had sex till I was 21, so I was a virgin till I was 21. And in Germany, all the people I would meet, had some experience. And I realized it's kind of like a catch-22 situation. You need to know how to have, like, it's not just like having sex, it's like you have to be comfortable, you have to be not insecure, but then you can't get there if you're insecure, and if you haven't done it before, you will be a little bit insecure. It was that circle, and I got out of it, but then I realized, why the fuck did I do that? Like, why did I take it away, this idea of being with people in love, and I just made it all brash, because everyone seemed to be doing it, and I just followed them, and I realized I was doing it because I was from India. And then I was like, ah, shit, you lost your own narrative, mate. What are you doing?
How could you not, though? That's how it is in this human existence, isn't it? Is that you having experience means you can't unhave the experience.
Yeah.
And experience is almost like our proof, isn't it? Of our proof of concept, if you like.
Yeah.
So it's a very tricky one. And there is a cultural weight upon you, isn't there? And stereotypes and all sorts.
Yeah.
Would suggest, from the home of the Kama Sutra and the art of love, if I could be really stereotypical, if we forgive me that, coming to the hellhole of the West, as it can be seen, I'm sure, as well, by people who don't have that same sort of set of morals. That's a real baptism of fire for you, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah. I think, okay, the stereotypes they had about Indians differ on where you are. If you're in Berlin, they're not as harsh, but they're more like, girls won't go out with you because they think you just want to have sex, you don't want to have a real relationship, because they think you want to get with an Indian girl, you're gonna go back, whatever.
Okay.
They would ask me for the first 2 years at least. They would ask me, "Oh, how long are you gonna live here?" Because they were like, oh, you fucking going back, whatever. And even if it was like it was a situation where we both knew that this is not a long-term thing, or it's just we just want to know each other first, they would still have these assumptions about what I consider what I have as ideals about a person, or like feminism or sex or stuff, and I would be like, no, you're thinking about what you've seen on the television. I'm not Apu, man. And then I came to Portugal, and yeah,
That reference, Apu from The Simpsons.
it's the stereotypes very much are affected by Western media and well, Hollywood, sadly.
Yes.
And in Portugal, they were very heavily affected by Hollywood. I think more so in Germany.
Okay.
And also, like, we're living somewhere where there aren't a lot of foreigners so far.
So where does that put you? Slumdog Millionaire?
I've heard a lot of weird things. I think the weirdest I heard was about someone asking me if I have a small penis. That was by far. Yeah.
Okay.
Just to my face in Lisbon at a restaurant. Just an unnamed chick just came up to me and she was like, "You're a big guy, but is it small?" And I'm like, "What? Did you just ask me right now? I don't even know you. Why would you be comfortable doing that?" Yeah.
Is that a kind of dating approach, do you think, or just a sort of sociological research?
I think she was just drunk.
Okay, yeah, I can always explain a lot of things, kind of.
Yeah. But also, I think it's. I've always been someone who just wants to respect other people and stuff. So it isn't just about feminism or egalitarian society or whatever. It's just what I felt comfortable in, the way I want to be treated is how I want to treat people. So, but people will still make that assumptions that you have antiquated ideas about things, and then you have to explain to them. And sometimes you just don't have the time, or it's very hard to explain the context of why you're thinking that way. Also, I think what I want to mention is I discovered, or not discovered, but I realized that I was something that I had felt before, but I didn't want to put it into words, was that I might be bisexual, that I might not just be straight. Because there's nothing else in India. Up till college, I had never even, I didn't knew what it meant to be someone who's gay or to be interested in a person of your same sex. And then I came to Germany, which was obviously more freer, and I realized, okay, this makes sense. This is probably what's more real. So my reality in India was something very different. I was more comfortable in it, and now I'm here, and I know more about myself in those terms, but it doesn't still doesn't click. And I think it's really connected to work too. It's really connected to entrepreneurship, and it just all bleeds into each other. The more I work, the more I realize that okay, I'm good, but there's so much more to be learned about myself and how I fit into things. And I don't know. I don't know what your experience has been coming here. I don't know if you've been like, oh shit, people respond differently to sales pitches or the
Hold on a minute. We're moving from sexuality to sales pitches. I suppose in many ways it's a similar thing. But to answer that, and I acknowledge you for being so open and sharing and authentic and inquiring as part of having a profound conversation and publicly as well. So thank you for that.
yeah.
And I think for me, I mean, I'm 30 years older nearly than you, and I am a married man with a family. And so these issues, I suppose, if we that sounds so patronizing, didn't I? But these are different milestones along the way, aren't they? And I share with you, the whole drama of being a young man and developing and understanding my own sexuality, and how that's more for me. It was more about how to relate to women, because that's the story I tell myself. I have a heterosexual story that is largely unchallenged, and the drama in that for me and the story are all in there is something you were saying about wanting to be respectful with people. And the most overwhelming thing, it hasn't for me, was not really about what is my sexuality, but how do I approach my heterosexuality and everything that's tied up in that, and the whole rabbit hole of what people are now calling tantric sex and understanding, where and it's interesting that you and I are having this sort of east-west dialogue.
Yeah.
And for the Westerners, we love the best of the East because it's more exotic and it provides information that's not tied up in our own culture. So it's always easier to pick that fruit and say, yeah, like it's appropriation, isn't it? That's why appropriation sucks so much, because you just take the fruit, but you haven't grown the fruit, and you just pick these best ideas and you try and put them into practice. But that's not to say that people's intentions aren't good and true and pure, and or just trying to do the right thing, whatever that means. But that's how it's been for me, and so that's really that's a separate thing to being an expat in this culture. What I do find interesting here is my perception of sexuality in Portuguese culture, and that the sex shop seems to be quite a new thing here, and the kind of on TV, the sort of Benny Hill type sexuality, that kind of 70s 80s thing that was going on in England seems to be what happens here now. On one level, the older people. I went to a circus show, and it was just, there was this hilarious routine which was about two men kissing each other. Ultimately, two clowns kissing each other, and the joke was it was two men kissing each other. Now, that's on one level a very dated joke, isn't it? That kind of dates a culture and the audience watching it if they find that funny. Because in Berlin, that just it'd be like, there's two guys kissing each other. What's funny about that? Or where I've come from, but it's contextualized, it's cultural, and I was laughing with everybody else because I was drawn into that place there. But it does seem there seem to be two things going on, and I see that as quite an innocent but a bit messed up. Like Benny Hill, it's just like it is messed up, and it's kind of innocent as well at the same time, because you just, people are not really, I don't know, understanding something or digging very deep. And then there are young people in this country, and that comes back to you. What that's so interesting to me is about that aspect of globalization. When young people are moving around the world as freely as they are now, all cultures are being undermined, as in what's held dear by the old people. And that's what I mean by culture. And I can't see that that's ever happened in a quicker way than it is happening right now. And how you're talking is a product of that, right? Or is a reflection of that.
But I want to ask you one more thing. Don't
Yeah.
you think it's that kind of idea where, oh, two men kissing is funny?
Yeah.
don't you think it's toxic? Don't you think it changes you a little, or it makes you feel comfortable with something like that? Like, I understand it's
Yeah,
funny, and I don't just mean that, but there's other things that people do here. And I think, I mean, again, I'm glad you mentioned that you're married and you have kids, because there's stuff that you probably don't experience in terms of the dating culture in Portugal, or the way people go out in clubs and meet people.
yeah.
I feel it's a very aggressive kind of
Yeah.
straightforward, no nonsense stuff. There's
I
no.
want to respond to all of that because that's really interesting. Okay, it's never been any different, I don't think, for every new kind of generation thinks it's kind of the most progressive, but I think it has different ways of presenting the information, because all young men in industrial culture, if we just take it back that far, had the same motives and kind of terrible standards of behavior, animalistic behavior forever. And it's been legitimized or formalized or acculturated in different ways. And we've got a current, you can examine it now, can't you? You can see the dating culture that goes on.
It
And
was just an example, though. That's not exactly what I'm saying. There's
okay,
other
cool.
stuff
Sorry.
around us. There's other stuff
Yeah,
around us that is like really small things that
yeah,
we might not particularly agree with, but we
yes,
understand that
yes,
it's acceptable here, or that they don't mean it, or they don't know. It's not for them. It's not something that they're doing to treat someone worse, badly, or to be unkind. It's just what they know, and they're just comfortable with it. But
yeah.
do you think are you ever scared that you will accept that stuff, and then, like, you
No,
will also
but
be
not on a personal level. But what I think is that the biggest realization I suppose I've had in the last decade is that contradictory things can be true at the same time, and there's no one answer to anything. So yes, it's funny. Yes, it's toxic. So it's both things. It's like it's not funny. It's not no longer funny because it's toxic. Because contextually it can be funny, and you and I could not be talking publicly now and have a private joke knowing that nobody would hear it. I mean, Donald Trump, for example, he's the great example, isn't he, of someone who said something really awful privately. It got recorded, and you would hope that private thing that got made public would bring him down, but it didn't. But this is where we have to be kind of. This is what I think it means to be grown up, is to understand context.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't make something okay. It just makes it understandable. Like, so
Mm-hmm.
because something is understandable doesn't mean it's all right.
No.
But it's better to have something that you're offended by but can understand than that you're consistently and persistently outraged by.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I feel about that. So, I didn't write a letter to the circus saying, you really need to update your humor because this is like dragging us back into, homophobic territory that we should be without. I could do, and I might do one day. I don't know. But
But it doesn't matter. It
yeah,
really. Yeah, no, you could do it, but do you think it would matter? Or, like, isn't it just selfish? If you send that email, maybe they make the change, but then it's probably not going to affect the whole. It's a much bigger problem, right? So do we start at the bottom and go
well,
up, or would
this
you
is
just?
another thing that's occurring to me is that you can't fight all of the world's problems in one go. The best you can do is be on the front line of your own life.
Yeah.
So if I were to see a situation, I think, where two men were kissing each other and it turned into a very ugly situation where there was a homophobic attack, I would like to think I would intervene into that,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it was a horrible
Yeah.
situation
Yeah.
and people shouldn't be persecuted on account of their sexuality. I'm also aware that I sat and laughed at a kind of essentially, homophobic joke, what do
Mm-hmm.
they call it, trope, meme, or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
within a circus context, and I can see it's wrong, and I still laughed. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that's honest and human. And I think so I would like to say, where I think it's unacceptable and I need to take action, I would. And I can't I can't I can't be an ideologically correct person all the time as much as I ideologically think I would like to be, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I
Because on an
think that's.
ideological level, you have to be correct, don't you? But we know that in our real lives, we're not correct. We do our best all all the time.
Yeah,
And sometimes that's just not good enough, but it was still our best.
the world is in black and white. Yeah, I have
Yeah.
another question for you about culture and your experience in Portugal.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the working culture, like working with people here
Yeah.
versus in UK? Do you feel there's a different idea of professionalism, of what's kind of like expected of you, how to convey your
Yeah.
dissatisfaction with the situation? Do you think that's something that's different
Yeah.
or?
Before I move on to that, I wanted to say that being married with kids is not a code for being heterosexual, as we've just discovered in the United Kingdom. A leading TV celebrity has come out,
Yeah.
and for years I thought he was gay anyway. It's like, and then I talked, I was
What's his name? I forgot his name. Do you
Philip,
remember?
Philip Schofield, who I
Yeah.
just assumed was gay. And it turns out I was right in this situation. And it's like, jokingly, I was saying to my wife, it's like, how come he didn't know when I knew? But he obviously he's in a difficult. There's the proof of my family life.
Yes.
It was difficult for him professionally, and he had to make the call in a very difficult society. Hold on.
You're still muted.
For my wife, it's like, wow, he can't be gay. He's married. So it's definitely that, is that it doesn't, just because you're married doesn't mean you're gay or you're not gay. It just means you're married. That's it. And if you've got kids, you've got kids. That doesn't mean anything about your sexuality either. But so I wasn't using it as a code to sort of enforce my sexuality. I was just telling you about the context of my life. Working, professional work. I mean, I've never really worked in any very formal setting, so I don't know. What I do, the story I have, though, about being here is that I work from home a lot and I work on my own business. And by local standards, I think that makes me quite lazy because I don't turn up and graft like Portuguese people appear to do. It's like the badge of honor here is to be worn out. And I don't think that's very sensible. I don't think that's very sensible. And I don't mean to criticize it, but, evidently, it's not very efficient even.
Yeah, I think you told me the term Protestant work culture. I didn't even know the term.
Yes, it's the work ethic, Protestant work ethic. Yeah.
Work ethic, sorry.
Yeah. I think it was a Catholic thing here, I guess. It is just an old fashioned work till you drop. Yeah, it is something here that you should, some people don't ever go on holiday. Some of the old people have never been on holiday. And it looks bad and you look lazy if you don't just keep working.
Yeah, it's the same in India for me. Like, you have to work a lot. That was the whole idea. That's the only way. I think it's from the old days in India, but also now the younger people are trying to ape Americans. That's the idea. They're like Silicon Valley, in entrepreneurship especially. The idea is, Elon Musk works 80 hours a week, man. We got to work so much. The Indian Prime Minister, the previous one, and also this one, they all publicize how many hours a week, how many hours a day they work, 15 hours a day. And every time I used to listen to that before I ever worked, I would be like, oh man, that's a lot of work. They're probably doing a lot of important stuff. And then I worked 100 hours a week myself, and I was like, dude, I was doing like really shoddy work when I was working 100 hours a week. There would be a lot of mistakes. That guy is running my country. I don't want him doing shoddy work at all.
Exactly. So, it's a very hard habit to break culturally. And that's what happens, isn't it? Is that you see someone passionate who works a lot. And sometimes people who are passionate and work a lot can get away with it because they are working on the passion, not just exhausting themselves. And then other people see that and think, okay, the reason he's successful is because he's working all the time. And it's not because he's working all the time. It's something else. And that's all I guess we need to understand. And that kind of brings us full circle, doesn't it? It's like how it appears to be is not actually how it really is. That's such a human thing to navigate and understand.
Yeah.
But we should probably conclude so that the conversation can continue with other people who've been inspired or upset by something we've said. It could be quite interesting.
Probably.
But, as a final note, and that given that the theme seems to be about globalization, really, in our own interpretation of that, where do you think this is going to go? Is this making the world a better place? Your experience and how you've experienced that shift, and the walls crumbling between East and West, and that sort of polarization.
I hope so. I mean, I grew up watching Star Trek, and no, it really is. so many things that Star Trek has.
Sorry, I
You
wasn't
know,
laughing again at you. I was laughing at like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, that's kind of it gave. I've always hoped that that would be some not space, but the idea that very different people, who look different, who eat different stuff, who have different context, whatever, they will at some point in the future not really care about small pointless things and understand that we're all the same. And I think for me that's been the same. It's like I went to Germany, and before I went to Germany I had this idea about the West which was from TV and books, and then I went there, and it's actually a little bit disappointing when you realize, oh well, it's just humans. It's just
Yes, it's just humans there.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's
But you
nothing
said it
much.
yourself, didn't you? That the biggest thing you've discovered about humans is about yourself in this,
Exactly.
not other people necessarily.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's in Star Wars as well, isn't it? You know, when they go in that cafe, or sorry, that bar, in where someone loses an arm or a head, but they're sat in a bar of people from all over various
oh
galaxies.
yeah. All right,
That
all
to
right.
me is such
So
a great little sort of metaphor. And that's why it's so strong, isn't it? Everyone understands what it's like to be in a bar with
mhm.
loads of different people, and perhaps what you're suggesting is that won't be a joke anymore, or it won't be a drama, because humans will just understand we're all being humans in there in some way.
Yeah, also again about the globalization thing, I'm hoping that people can use the internet and social media, etc., to communicate more clearly,
Mm.
and rather than communicate just for no reason. Like I go to a lot of meetups, as and I realize that people there, although they say they want to, meet new people and they want to talk about other stuff, but they gravitate towards their comfort zones. They gravitate
Mm.
towards more cultures that are more like theirs. They will talk to the Germans, they will talk to people Portuguese, they'll go to talk to Germans. The people from Egypt will go talk to the people from Morocco. The Indians will talk to the Indians, and I'll stand there and I'll be like, why did you? If it's an international meetup and the whole idea was to meet new people, why are you just talking to people who are almost the same culture as yours? Like I'm not saying Morocco and Egypt are the same, but
Yeah, I get it.
yeah,
But and that's humans being humans again, right?
yeah. And I honestly try and break it. Like my whole
I'm sure you
point.
do.
Sorry.
I'm sure you do. I can see you doing that, and it's kind of you're breaking it because you're doing the opposite, aren't you? In a way to undermine that sort of culture.
Yeah, but I don't know. Just one last question I have for you.
Yeah.
How do you think we can like use social media and stuff, if possible, better to kind of talk about these things more clearly to people that I know. I want to explain it to them, but I have all the words, but it's so hard to explain like the problems, and
Yeah.
that I don't mean anything bad when I say that Aveiro is conservative. It's just the reality. I don't mean to say I don't like it here. It's just that it's what it is, and it's not. I'm not being an
Mate,
asshole.
I really can't see any alternative for a while of explaining yourself and having the courage to do that. And I take my hat off to you for doing that in this conversation. And that's the answer that I would give to the question you ask, is that one of the problems of digital is it's very polar and it's very short. It's short bursts of it's like Morse code, isn't it? And you can't do much with that until we develop a bigger picture behind the scenes. So I think at the moment that's why this long form and why long form podcasts I think are important, is because people have time to develop what they're talking about, and we still need the time to do that as human beings. That's why people complain about quality of life and not having enough time, is because they want more time to do more things they enjoy. I think part of that is being with people as well as just blasting them with information, like, dislike, agree, disagree, blue, red, left, right. That's
Mhm.
not working for us because
Mhm.
it loses all the nuance and the conversation that goes with it. And
Yeah,
we're being manipulated on that basis, is that
yeah,
you can be forced into buckets,
yeah,
digital buckets of manipulation. So we organize ourselves like that. And then it comes back to us as how we're manipulated through information and advertising and marketing. And that's the answer, I think, for me, to your question, is the time. We've got to take the time. We've got to dig deep, and we have to explain ourselves and have conversations. and people need to lose it, freak out, but the conversation can continue. It's okay to be upset. It's okay to be offended. It's okay to be outraged. It's okay to make mistakes, as long as you know that there is recourse and respect, and that can be looked at again, rather than writing people off, which is again part of the nature of current digital culture, isn't it? It's like drive-by or road rage. You do it because you know you're safe. And you're not, because we're seeing the effect we're having on our society. If you don't have the bust up with someone online, it'll go elsewhere, because that other person you bullied or whatever will be in their community being sad and upset and offended. So it just moves the problem somewhere else. It doesn't get rid of it.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Like before social media, it wasn't that there weren't trolls, and there weren't people who were just vitriolic.
Yeah,
They
different
were
form.
there.
I might be able to put a clip of meme onto the end of this interview, but I saw it on, this is social media representation, and it's a gate, one of those moving metal gates, and there are dogs barking at each other on this gate, and it's one of those sort of remote control ones. So as it's moving, the dogs realize that the gate is moving from between them, and they stop barking at each other. They just walk away. So whilst it's there and they can't actually do injury to each other, they're barking like they're going to kill each other. And as it withdraws from between them, they think, oh, and they just turn around and walk off. And I think that is a really good metaphor for social media. And that's why, that's why I'm so keen that this is the place for conversations where we have those, and we do. It's a little bit of hard work, really.
It is.
Application. Let's call it application rather than hard work.
Yeah.
Don't want to put people off. I thank you so much.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you for having me.